Lately, there's been a lot of rhetoric comparing certain politicians to Adolf Hitler. The concern, supposedly, is that a Nazi-style regime may be rising in America. That process, folks, however, began a long time ago. In fact, following World War II, the U.S. government actually recruited Hitler's employees, adopted his protocols, embraced his mindset about law and order, slowly implemented his tactics, and began to lay the foundations for the rise of the Fourth Reich. Sound far-fetched? Well, listen up, folks. It's all documented. As historian Robert Lately recounts, the Nazi police state was initially so admired for its efficiency and order by the world powers of the day that Herbert Hoover, then head of the FBI, actually sent one of his right-hand men, Edmund Patrick Coffey, to Berlin in January 1938 at the invitation of Germany's secret police, the Gestapo. The FBI was so impressed with the Nazi regime that, according to the New York Times, in the decades after World War II, the FBI, along with other government agencies, aggressively recruited at least 1,000 Nazis, including some of Hitler's highest henchmen. All told, thousands of Nazi collaborators, including the head of a Nazi concentration camp, among others, were given secret visas and brought to America by way of a program called Project Paperclip. Subsequently, they were hired on as spies and informants and then camouflaged to ensure that their true identities and ties to Hitler's Holocaust machine would remain unknown. All the while, believe it or not, thousands of Jewish refugees were refused entry visas to this country, America, on the grounds that it would threaten national security. As if the government's covert taxpayer-funded employment of Nazis after World War II wasn't bad enough, U.S. government agencies, including the FBI, CIA, and the military, have embraced many of the Nazis' well-honed policing tactics and have initially used them repeatedly against American citizens. Indeed, with every passing day, the U.S. government borrows yet another leaf from Nazi Germany's playbook: secret police, secret courts, secret government agencies, surveillance, censorship, intimidation, harassment, torture, brutality, widespread corruption, entrapment, indoctrination, indefinite detention. These are not tactics used by constitutional republics. They never have been, where the rule of law and the rights of the citizenry should reign supreme. Rather, they are the hallmarks of authoritarian regimes, where the only law that counts comes in the form of heavy-handed, unilateral dictates from a supreme ruler who uses a secret police to control the populace. That danger is now posed by the FBI, whose laundry list of crimes against the American people includes surveillance, disinformation, blackmail, entrapment, intimidation tactics, harassment, governmental overreach, abuse, misconduct, trespassing, enabling criminal activity, and damaging private property. And that's just based on what we know. Whether the FBI is planning undercover agents in churches, synagogues, and mosques, issuing fake emergency letters to gain access to Americans' phone records, using intimidation tactics to silence Americans who are critical of the government, recruiting high school students to spy on and report on fellow students who allegedly show signs of being future terrorists, or persuading impressionable individuals to plot acts of terror and then entrapping them, the overall impression of the nation's secret police force is that of a well-dressed thug, flexing its muscles and doing the boss's dirty work of ensuring compliance, keeping tabs on potential dissidents, and punishing those who dare to challenge the status quo. Whatever minimal restrictions initially kept the FBI's surveillance activities within the bounds of the law have all but disappeared in post-9/11. Since then, the FBI has been transformed into a mammoth federal policing and surveillance agency that largely operates as a power unto itself. Let me give you a few examples of the FBI's far-reaching powers to surveil, detain, interrogate, investigate, prosecute, punish, police, and generally act as a law unto themselves, much like their Nazi cousins, the Gestapo, and then try to convince yourself that the United States is still a constitutional republic. Just like the Gestapo, the FBI has vast resources, vast investigatory powers, and vast discretion to determine who is an enemy of the state, so-called. Today, the FBI employs more than 35,000 individuals and operates more than 56 field offices in major cities across the country, as well as 400 residence agencies in smaller towns and more than 50 international offices. In addition to their data campus, which houses more than 96 million sets of fingerprints from across the United States and elsewhere, the FBI has also built a large database of tens of thousands of Americans and legal residents who are not accused of any crime. What such people have done is appear to be acting suspiciously to a town sheriff, a traffic cop, or even a neighbor. The FBI's growing and large databases on Americans are not only being added to and used by local police agencies, but they're also being made available to employers for real-time background checks on you. Much like the Gestapo spied on mail and phone calls, FBI agents have full access to the citizenry's most personal information. Working through the U.S. Post Office, the FBI has access to every piece of mail that passes through the postal system. More than 160 billion pieces are scanned and recorded annually, every year. Moreover, the agency's national security letters, one of the many illicit powers authorized by the U.S. Patriot Act, allows the FBI to secretly demand that banks, phone companies, and other businesses provide them with customer information and not disclose those demands to the customer. Much like the Gestapo's sophisticated surveillance program, the FBI's spying capabilities can delve into Americans' most intimate details and allow local police to do so as well. In addition to technology, which is shared with local police agencies that allows them to listen in on phone calls, read emails and text messages, and monitor web activities, the FBI surveillance boasts an invasive collection of spy tools ranging from stingray devices that can track the location of cell phones to triggerfish devices, which allow agents to eavesdrop on phone calls. Much like the Gestapo's ability to profile based on race and religion and its assumption of guilt by association, the FBI's approach to pre-crime allows it to profile Americans based on a broad range of characteristics including race and religion. The agency's biometric database has grown to massive proportions, the largest in the world, encompassing everything from fingerprints, palm, face, and iris scans to DNA. It's being increasingly shared between federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies in an effort to target American citizens whom they believe might be potential criminals long before they ever commit a crime. This is what's known as pre-crime. Much like the Gestapo's power to render anyone an enemy of the state, the FBI has the power to label anyone a domestic terrorist. As part of the government's so-called ongoing war on terror, the FBI has begun using the terms anti-government, extremist, and terrorist interchangeably. Moreover, the FBI continues to add to its growing list of characteristics that can be used to identify an individual, especially anyone who disagrees with the government, as a potential domestic terrorist. For instance, you might be considered a domestic terrorist in the eyes of the FBI and its network of snitches if you do some of these things. 1. Express libertarian philosophies. Read survivalist literature, including apocalyptic fictional books. Show signs of self-sufficiency. You stockpile food, ammo, hand tools, medical supplies. You fear an economic collapse. You buy gold and you barter items. You subscribe to religious views concerning the book of Revelation. You voice fears about Big Brother or big government. You expound about constitutional rights and civil liberties. You believe in the coming of a new world order. Well, this sounds like a lot of folks I know and people are writing out there. Much like the Gestapo infiltrated communities in order to spy on the German citizenry, the FBI routinely infiltrates political and religious groups as well as businesses. Believe it or not, the FBI sends undercover agents or informants to work with political and religious organizations, including mosques and churches, synagogues, as well as schools, clubs, and businesses to collect information on fellow citizens. The FBI has even been paying Geek Squad technicians at Best Buy to spy on customers' computers without a warrant. Just as the Gestapo's secret files on political leaders were used to intimidate and coerce, the FBI's file on anyone suspected of anti-government sentiment have been similarly abused. As countless documents make clear, the FBI has no qualms about using its extensive powers in order to blackmail politicians, spy on celebrities and high-ranking government officials, and intimidate and attempt to discredit dissidents of all stripes. For example, Not only did the FBI follow Martin Luther King Jr. and bug his phones in hotel rooms, but his agents also sent him anonymous letters urging him to commit suicide. Just as the Gestapo carried out entrapment operations, the FBI has become a master in the art of entrapment. In the wake of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the FBI has not only targeted vulnerable individuals, but has also lured or blackmailed them into fake terror plots while actually equipping them with the organization, money, weapons, and motivation to carry out the plots. Then the FBI jails or deports them for their so-called terrorist plotting. This is what the FBI characterizes as forward-leaning, preventative prosecutions. In fact, USA Today estimates that agents have authorized criminals to engage in as many as 15 crimes a day. Some of these informants are getting paid astronomical sums. One unsavory fellow, later arrested for attempting to run over a police officer, was actually paid $85,000 for his help laying the trap for an entrapment scheme. When and if a true history of the FBI is ever written, it will not only track the rise of the American police state, but it will also chart the decline of freedom in America in much the same way that the empowerment of Germany's secret police tracked the rise of the Nazi regime. How did the Gestapo become the terror of the Third Reich? It did so by creating a sophisticated surveillance and law enforcement system that relied for its success on the cooperation of the military, the local police, various government employees, and the intelligence community, and, believe it or not, neighborhood watchdogs. This means your neighbors are watching you. In other words, ordinary citizens working with government agents helped create the monster that became Nazi Germany. Much like the German people, we the people, though, have become passive, polarized, gullible, easily manipulated, and lacking in critical thinking skills. Distracted by entertainment spectacles, politics, and our screen devices, we too are complicit, silent partners in creating a police state similar to the terror practiced by former regimes. Here's the big question. Can the Fourth Reich happen here? It's already happening right under our noses.